Hello, this is John Thompson coming to you from Sarasota, Florida. I recently built a application for a local attorney firm to track time and expenses. I used Grails to build it and thought I'd rebuild it in a tutorial type series to show how the Grails framework can be used to build an enterprise class application. I'm going to start by building a Rails project from scratch and walk through the various steps to build out the application. I'm going to assume in this that you do have a basic understanding of Grails and are just starting out with the framework, but you do have some understanding, like you bought the Grails in Action book or something like that, and I've read through it and trying to get a start on Grails. I did mention that I do live in Sarasota, Florida. I've been working with Grails for about 2 years now. Have 10 years of experience or so with Java and other technologies. You can contact me at SirJStorms on Twitter or fly.yamaha@gmail if you have any questions on this. And of course, the series is going to be up on my blog, so comments are welcome there as well. The application is a simple application to allow users to track time and expenses for a client. This was originally designed for a law firm I mentioned. You can go in and create new clients, track time by users, and enter in simple expenses. The technology I use behind this, obviously, I mentioned Grails, which has Spring, Hibernate, Groovy, Site Mesh in there. But I did divert from some of the standard Grails stuff, the templates, and I'm using Blueprint for the CSS to control the layout, jQuery, and also jQuery UI. Integrated in this for security is the Spring Security Core plugin, as well as the Spring Security UI plugin. Gives you a quick way to secure the application and manage users. At the end of this, I will show you how to deploy up to EC2 using Cloud Foundry, and there's also the Elastic Beanstalk on EC2. Let's see if we get enough response on this. Maybe we'll do a special series on deploying up to EC2 using Elastic Beanstalk. I would like to give you a quick demonstration of the finished app here. Okay, you'll see that I have the app running on my local host here, running in Firefox. I'm going to log into the application here using admin, a user that I've set up. And this is a login form that is styled with the jQuery UI styling. And I'm going to click on enter here, and you'll see that the app has a basic welcome screen, and we also have a menu up here at the top, and I am using a suckerfish type menu that's been styled with jQuery for some of the nice transitions that you'll see here. The application again was designed for tracking time and expenses for a law firm, so I have a enter time, and it comes up and asks to search for a client. And this is criteria that the law firm wanted, and it goes to a backend component that uses a Hibernate criteria query that's built on the fly depending on what is entered. And I'm not going to enter in anything, and we'll bring back a full result set of all my test data, which is just 3 records. And I'm going to go into Joe Smith just to show you the functionality of the application. So here's Joe's information, and I've got buttons here to add time, expense, update the client, or the closing counsel, and I'm going to go ahead and add time at this point. And you'll see that I get a nice jQuery window pops up, and I'm going to add 2 hours and add in a comment and click submit. You can see that the pop-up window goes away, and here's my 2 hours. The grid was automatically updated. And I'm going to do the same for the expense. We'll add $3 of postage, put in some comments here, and click on submit. And you can see that the window goes away, and we get the row added here. Also got a pop-up window here for the updating the client information, or to change his last name. I can do that. Click on submit, and you can see that I get the updated And also the last name is refreshed on the screen here. Other things in this, I used the standard Grails templates for some of the referential data that the users weren't going to be using too much, but they still needed the basic CRUD operations. So you can see that this is straight from Grails, no big mystery there if you're familiar with Grails. So I can go in and update information. And then finally, I am using the Spring Security UI plugin, and you can see that this is a little bit different. This is again from the plugin, and you can see the various clients there, search on the roles, and the different roles that have been set up. And if I return home, I'll go back to my home page. And then we also have the log out button here, and it just simply logs you out. So that's the app in a nutshell. And the next section of this, we're going to start by setting up a Grails project and go through the steps to recreate this. Okay, before we jump into development, just a quick word of what you're going to be seeing here. I like to joke around saying, much like the maid, I don't do Windows. I do enjoy good Mac versus Windows jokes, but my development environment is OS X, and I'm running on 27-inch iMac. So the screen capture software I'm using should make that okay for viewing on smaller screens, and hopefully everything will translate pretty good if you're viewing this on a smaller screen. I will be using IntelliJ. That is my favorite IDE. It's a fantastic IDE, and it's got a lot of great support for Grails built into it. And it is a licensed product, and I believe you can get a personal license for about $250, and well worth the money. The tool and also the support from the company have been fantastic. I've been using IntelliJ for probably about 4 years now, and been very happy with them. And finally, the browser I'll be using is Firefox, and also be probably diving into the Firebug extension for some of the demonstrations. I have found that Firebug is pretty invaluable for doing web development. With that, let's move on, and we'll get into IntelliJ and create a new project. Okay, and our next thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually create the Grails application. And to actually create the Grails application, we're going to use the command line interface to do that. I'm going to assume that you've been able to install Grails on your machine and have the environment set up correctly. If you don't, there's plenty of how-tos on the internet for that. So I'm going to ask you to do the Grails command, create app. It's just simply Grails, create app, and we'll call this time app. And at this time, you'll see on the screen here that Grails is being invoked and the scripts are running to build up the environment. And if I do an ls here, see that that's been created. And you can see that the standard Grails directory structure has been created. Now, I've got IntelliJ open here, and I'm going to transition over to IntelliJ and create a new project in IntelliJ. From here, I'm going to say create a Grails application from existing resources, and I am going to navigate to my time application and click OK. You can see that it created in this directory here. And say OK. I've already got a Grails SDK installed for Grails 136. IntelliJ remembered this. If this is your first time through it, you'll have to tell IntelliJ where your SDK is located. So I'm going to click on Finish here. And we can see that this has gone out, and it's detecting the environment. And you can see that IntelliJ has set up the project as well as the Grails application. And right now there's not a lot in there. We got the standard bootstrap file, and this is the base generic file that has been created for us in IntelliJ. And I'm going to take a minute here just to run it to see what fires up. And you can see that the application did fire up, and it's actually running inside my browser here. This is the vanilla Grails installation. You can see the basic application status and some of the generic information about Grails. Going forward, we're going to get rid of this and set up our own project. Okay, before we get too much further, there's one thing that I want to point out to you. If you come up here and go to Edit Configurations in IntelliJ, you do want to adjust your VM parameters running Grails. This is the runtime when you go to launch it. By default, it doesn't get very much memory, and when you start changing the code and compiling on the fly, you will run out of permgen space. But a simple adjustment to the JVM parameters will help that out. And I'm mentioning this because it is something that did trick me up when I was starting out with Grails. But if you do see permgen errors, that is the root cause. It's not having enough memory, and just applying a few tweaks to the JVM memory will get you on your way. And this is the area within IntelliJ that you can do that at. Okay, now I want to go in and show you how to add some plugins. And I'm going to do that through IntelliJ. And the IntelliJ provides a little plugin wizard. I'll click on that and bring that up. And here is a list of the available plugins in IntelliJ. And first off, I want to select the Blueprint plugin. And if anything popular, sometimes there are multiple versions and it can get a little confusing as to which you want. I recommend grabbing the one that Mark Palmer has published. He's keeping it up with the current releases and keeping the version number with the Blueprint release. So that's the one I'm going to use for this project. And I'm going to scroll down and let's grab the Spring Security stuff while we're in here. And what we need is the Spring Security Core plugin and also the Spring Security UI plugin. Okay, these are two plugins that Bert Beckwith has developed, and I've used the Spring Security plugin quite a bit, and it's probably one of the better plugins out there. It's very versatile and very easy to use, and certainly well documented. And I'm going to apply these changes. You can see I get a confirmation dialog. Asks me, do I want to install these? And it's going to go out, grab them, and register them into the project. And one thing I'd like to point out about IntelliJ is you do get a second module here of the plugins. And you can see it just added in the plugins that we added. And these are in the Grails build system. They are registered at least in a Linux or Unix environment. You're going to get them stored in your home folder under .grails, which is a hidden folder. And then the version of Grails projects, your project name, and plugins. And from here, it is handy to come in and you can see the source of the plugins. This is a feature that they did add in IntelliJ 10 somewhere along the lines, and it has been pretty handy going in to see what a plugin's doing. You have quick access to the code. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up for now. Coming up next, in the next session, I'm going to try to cover installing the Spring Security plugin. There's a couple domains that need to be created, and we'll step through some of the configuration options for that. And then also build out the domain model for a little application. Show you a quick intro and rundown on the GORM tools and the domain objects that we'll be using. And I want to conclude that with setting up the Bootstrap file to load up some data that we'll be using for testing going forward. Hope you've enjoyed this, and take care.